What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Okay, so this is awkward. Um, I I do want to point out that before I move on with today's topic, this evening's topic, if any of you were wondering what Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp think about the film Age of Disclosure, you're about to find out because I'm sure you all caught the glaring inconsistencies when it comes to the programs that are named there and some of the absentees who are not in the film, who are very notable. I did a video about Dr. Jacques Vallée and Tom DeLonge, and there's also the David Grusch absence of the film, and the fact that Grusch hasn't spoken about the film at all. He hasn't mentioned it at all. So we got a little glimpse of what probably could be going on. We got a little glimpse at the internal differences that exist within the disclosure movement amongst the people at the very top of the information ladder. And I know that this opinion from George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell is not going to be appreciated by people like, for example, Dan Farah, some of the people involved in the film, Lou Elizondo, and others, because as we've been discussing here, and I'm sure you've all realized by now, this film has a very specific way in which they want disclosure to happen. I've already noticed a little bit of those differences between camps. Like the way I regard it is the following: there's a camp that is very pro disclosure from the government, that is like, they want for these amnesties and pardons to take place so they can talk about this stuff more freely. There is another camp who is pro disclosure as well, that is more whistleblower oriented, sort of, not so much government. And whistleblowers have been amongst the most marginalized people within the movement, because people like Dylan Borland and Matthew Brown are people that are struggling because they decided to come forward. And Corbell and Knapp are for those people. They support whistleblowers. Everybody does, though, but it's very clear from Age of Disclosure that there is a certain way they want things to happen. And this is where I think Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp take the biggest issue with. And they dropped an afternoon weaponized episode, which is not common. They usually drop it between noon and like 1, 2 p.m. Pacific time. This time they dropped it at 5 p.m. Pacific. And already from that, I kind of had an idea that something was up. When I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, so they are going to talk about the movie. I was wondering when they would discuss the movie, but they said different, very, very incendiary things, I think, for the people who did the film. I'm sure Dan Farah is not happy at all about this, but they do raise some interesting points. And I do want to ask you guys, what do you think about it? The first part that I'm going to play to you guys is what do the panel, because it was not just Jeremy and George, it was also Joe Murgia, Danny Silva, and Ryan Robbins. And they're well-known people within the community. They've been on Weaponized before. They've been on panels like this one before. And they do raise some interesting topics. For me, I don't know what logic Dan Farah and Jay Stratton used to be part of this film without mentioning OSAP, the stuff with Skinwalker Ranch, James Lakatsky, a lot of these people. I know that they probably did that because they don't want to confuse people. But if you don't want to confuse people, why would you talk about the program, meaning ATIP, that has been the most disputed when you're talking about this topic and the people involved in it? And I'm surprised because Jay Stratton knows perfectly well about OSAP and not a peep. And they focused on the Elizondo part of the story. And Jeremy Corbell does say it here, something that I've been talking about for a little while, that I think some of these people like Jay, like Dr. Eric Davis, like Lou Elizondo himself, might even be part of the legacy program. And that's why they're seeking amnesty. And now that George and Jeremy are openly alluding to it a little bit, I think that's what's might be happening. I don't know. And I get it. There's people that are not going to like this, that they think it's against the movement, that they think that everybody should get along. But it's really difficult in UFO land. I'm a newbie here, and I have a really small channel still, but I can already see the cracks within the movement since I got here. There's a lot of ego driven attitudes from a lot of people involved in this. And this is what the main issue is, in my opinion. It's not about whether you're for or against a certain narrative within the topic, or if you're for or against a movie like Age of Disclosure. Corbell and Knapp say it themselves. It is a very important movie, but the inconsistencies in information are the mistake. And people are going to point them out. They already are. Day one after the film premiered, people were already talking about ATIP and how it was Elizondo heavy, despite the things that he's done recently, the mistakes that he's made recently. And now it's abundantly clear. There's some people within this movie that are part of the legacy program, and they're trying to get their amnesty and their pardons. And yeah, this is what George, Jeremy, Joe, Danny, and Ryan think about the movie.
Watching Age of Disclosures, I saw how people could come together to create I'm going to say a narrative that was easily digestible by the public. But anybody that knows the true history of how these UFO programs that George and I have reported on, and George has reported on this before anybody, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. The absence of the acknowledgement of OSAP was troubling to me. And maybe like you guys can pick apart why you think that might be troubling.
I think once people start, if people are new to this and they go, oh, this is really interesting, I'm going to start digging deeper. And then they discover skinwalkers at the Pentagon and they discover OSAP, they're going to say, this movie isn't accurate. And I think, Danny, you brought it up, something we know about. We know this isn't accurate. What else do we not know about that they're talking about is also not accurate? So it's going to, it's going to put that out there. And we want transparency and truthfulness. And I understand not wanting to go there because it gets really messy with orbs and, the biological effects and what Jay Stratton and his family experienced. I get that. But you could have mentioned OSAP, the paranormal connection, and said, we're going to we'll address it in another movie. And I know Farah has said that in interviews. He mentions OSAP, but for the movie, it may create a credibility problem, which we definitely do not need.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, man, it didn't seem like it was lost in translation. It seemed like they wanted you to believe that that ATIP, was correct, and the New York Times had received the $22 million that funded this whole study, and it just and it ran for that long, and that's just not true. And that's, I think that's okay in some ways. Like, I'm looking big picture, but George, I wanted to know what you think, because you reported on all this from the embryonic stage. You were in there reporting on this before anybody ever knew about it. You gave that wink and the nod in Hunt for the Skinwalker in my movie, saying something big is about to happen. So it's got to kind of, because you're friends with all these guys, so it's got to kind of irk at you. So can you give me your perspective? I think our audience deserves to hear it, man.
Well, again, I don't want to be a turd in the punch bowl or rain on the parade of the movie, because it's a great movie and it is important. But that is a pretty glaring omission. And I was glad to see Lou Elizondo and Jay Stratton on the same stage, even if they weren't being entirely truthful. But if you're making a movie and you're calling for disclosure and honesty, and we want to know the truth, tell us the truth. We can handle the truth. We want transparency. You got to live up to that standard too. And OSAP got the $22 million. That's the money that Reed got for it.
Bro, this is so bad. It needed to be said. Don't get me wrong, but the whole purpose of Dan Farah's film, in part, does rest in the fact that the people involved in this topic that are trying to bring out information for the masses at least need to talk to each other, so you guys can have like a better output of information together, a coordination. And sometimes, like, one of the leading criticisms about the UFO movement is that it's all coordinated and it feels like it's like a dark plan. This right here, to me, proves that there is a lack of communication amongst the people involved in this. And they're telling it to you right now. I mean, they agree the film is pretty great. It's fantastic, but there are many omissions and non-truths that are hurting the film. And they had to say something, Jeremy and George, because the vast majority of their reporting is resting on the stuff that was omitted in age of disclosure. So they couldn't stay silent. And honestly, I'm glad that they spoke up. I am glad because now we can get to talking properly about what's actually going on. And yes, the film is going to do fantastically well, I think. But if it does get to an award stage and it does get nominated for stuff, this is going to be a huge hole in the narrative that they're trying to paint. And I don't think Jeremy and George are going to stay quiet about this if more things develop, as they are not staying quiet about what they think should have been added or should have been said in the film. Just one mention. I did say it. It's like, dude, just mention the program. No need for it to elaborate on it. There's a lot of people involved in this. It's not just them who are part of this film. There's a lot of people involved in this. And I get the whole Elizondo versus Greer war that is going on. I get that. And I understand from a certain perspective why they don't mention that part. But not talking about this and the contribution, for example, that George Knapp made in the whole program and not mentioning OSAP, that was a mistake. From the beginning, I saw it. It was like, people are going to react to this. And look who did. So for me, this is not good. But I'm glad that they're talking. They're speaking up. Whoever has an objection against what these guys are saying, speak up. Now's the time. Now that George and Jeremy decided to go public with this and to talk about it and to point out those inconsistencies, I think everybody should speak up. That was when. I'd say, I don't know.
ATIP came later. It grew out of it. It did not have a budget that we know of. Lou Elizondo and Jay Stratton were involved in it, but they have had very vigorous, I'll put it that way, vigorous disagreements about what program did what and who was in charge of what, that they have expressed for a number of years. The fact that they've come together and found some common ground that both are able to agree on for purposes of the movie is probably a good thing. Having the movie out without a bunch of internal squabbles is good. But eventually, Jay's going to have his book come out. I think it's still wrapped up in the Dopser process. And I don't think it's going to toe to the line of the sequence of events that we heard in the movie. I just don't. And because they aren't. And the people who were involved directly with OSAP, who are here in Las Vegas, are not likely to come forward and raise a stink about it. They're just not. But I can tell you, they watched this and they were pretty upset about it.
Okay, so we've done right for your friends that actually ran OSAP and did all that work. It's got to feel like they're a little bit robbed, not having that told, that part of the story. But let's maybe it's not like that it's a matter of truth. Maybe it's just a selective telling of a part of history. I think it's a nicer way to say it.
Man, and people are gonna come out and try to spin this shit like you have no idea. I just want for their words to not be misinterpreted, though. But it's a good thing that they're talking. But for me, the biggest piece of this whole episode where they're saying the thing out loud, one of those absences. And as you know, David Grusch did not only speak with Jay Stratton on that first day when he approached them, he also spoke to Corbell and Knapp. And Corbell and Knapp have a close relationship with David Grusch, and everybody was wondering, why is Grusch not part of the film? He does appear in the film, but he's not interviewed in it. And why has he never said a thing about age of disclosure? I think it's clear now, or a little bit clearer. So this is what they said about David Grusch not being in the film. And this is going to also upset some people because clearly the majority of people in ufology believe that David Grusch is the most credible whistleblower that exists. I happen to agree with that. And the fact that he's not promoting this film or helping promote this film was already a major hole in the narrative. And I don't know. Here's what George and Jeremy say about David Grusch not being part of Age of Disclosure.
Valuable addition to the movie. Why do you suppose he wasn't in it?
Well, I think he definitely chose not to be in it. I remember helping to make that connection with Dan so that they could have that conversation. I think Dave has a kind of different tactic to getting out what he knows to be true. Dave is a true whistleblower. This is not a managed message with Dave. Not that it is with the other guys, but it is at least authorized. With Dave, he really is working on a fundamental attitude that nobody has the right to hold this back. So let's go to his interview for 1 second. I helped in just trying to get him in touch with a network and a producer that would be able to hear what he had to say and treat it properly. I mean, we could have done the same, George, but President Trump doesn't watch Weaponized as far as I know. So so David Grusch talked again, and I was really glad he decided to, because he's not all over the media. I do think that he has a difference of opinion, and that's for him to talk about when it comes to this stuff. He really thinks everybody should just open up and say what they know. For example, he thinks that if Lou Elizondo was part of the legacy UFO program, that he should just say it. Go out on the limb and just say it. And I think that's the difference of opinion. I think the film would have had Dave participate if Dave had agreed, but I think that he's just on a different path. Am I explaining that clearly?
Yeah.
Kind of. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you are, Jeremy. Yes, you are. And this is the issue right here. Stuff that we've been saying in this channel. And I'm glad that we finally know who is the one who helped put together that interview on Fox that I did the scoop of. But I don't know what you guys think about this. If Lou Elizondo is part of the legacy program, he should just say it. That's how David Grusch more than likely feels. What do you think about that? Is Lou Elizondo part of the legacy program, I wonder? Man, this is going to cause a lot of waves, I think. More disagreements, unfortunately, but I think that it's necessary to speak about these things because there's a lot going on in the background in ufology that a lot of people don't find out about that I think should be more public. Because even though the majority of people are more than likely pro UFOs and they want for the truth to come out, there's a portion of them that they want for their truth to come out, not the truth or whatever is going on. And that's a problem. And that's what you see happening here in real time as these two take the stage to talk about the film. What do you think about it? It opened up a massive debate that I think airs a little bit of what goes on in the back channels of ufology. And I've always considered Jeremy and George like a very important part of this whole thing. And now that they've clearly positioned themselves, now it's going to get really, really interesting. And I hope that everybody just remembers that we're supposed to be on the same side. We're all supposed to be wanting for the same things. And if the people involved in Age of Disclosure are not being forthcoming with what they know, with the information they have, if they're going after people for disagreeing with them, then we should ask them why. And we should ask them to be more forthcoming. Because if you build something out of an omission of truth, if you don't start well from the beginning, it's not going to end well. It's just the law of nature. So let me know what you think. I think it's a very controversial one. It's going to clearly divide a lot of people, I think. Hopefully not. Hopefully they can see past it and they can talk it over. But you guys got to talk to each other, man. This shit can't keep happening. It's one of the main reasons denialists and people who are just after you is one of the main reasons they get more material to go after you, I think. So talk to each other. It's not difficult. I'm sure you all have each other on speed dial. What is the deal? So let me know what you think in the comments about this. What do you think about Jeremy and George's opinion on age of disclosure? And what do you think about David Grusch making the decision to not be part of the film? That's big. Let me know. If you like the content you see, I'm going to ask you to like, share, hype, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. That's all you need to do in order to help us, and it is what helps us the most, so thank you. But if you want to support us in other ways, there's a few links down there you can choose from. You can also become a member on YouTube, or you can support us through KGRA. Anything you choose to do is always appreciated, so thank you. That's it for me today on this video, but I'll see you guys in the next one. Remember, stay curious and inquisitive like Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp from Weaponized. Always. Bye.